So much talk about healthcare. That's how this thing kicked off last night. Took up almost the whole first hour. A, do you think that was the right move? And B, who made the best case for their plan?
I think it is the right way, because I think when Democratic primary voters, it is the central issue. People were left at the end of the Obama administration with a sense that we had made incremental change, but had not fundamentally solved the problem that Americans don't have access and cannot afford health care. And it was the first thing Donald Trump took on to reverse the Obama administration. It deserves to be the central issue. It was, and it's the principal thing that defines the 40% of the party, a significant number, which is Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They have a solid 40% block and everybody else.
Charlie?
Yeah, well, I think that's where you saw the real dividing line, because there's two big questions here. Number one, how are you going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? And will people actually be forced to lose their private health insurance? And then that really was a sharp line. And I think that Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar, and Pete Buttigieg are like raising the red flag, saying, do you really want to go into a race with Donald Trump, saying you're going to take away private health insurance from millions of Americans? And Elizabeth Warren has a plan, but you'll notice that she's very reticent about explaining who and how she's going to pay for it. Bernie Sanders is at least willing to say, yes, I'm going to raise taxes, on the middle class. But she has not yet been forced to articulate, where does the money come from? And I will tell you, this will be a huge issue in the general election. Some of those candidates are thinking ahead to that general election, and some of these candidates are locked in the Democratic bubble where they're talking to one another about it. And I don't think they've fully internalized how that's going to play in the swing states.
Then, Jason Johnson, why doesn't Joe Biden swing back with that? We said it earlier, Joe Biden continuing to take hits from all sides rather than just defend himself. Why don't we see Joe Biden push back and say, if Obama was the greatest president and everyone on this stage stood with him, many of whom voted with him, why not build upon what he did? You're not going to be able to pay for your plan. We're just seeing him on the defense, not really on the offense. And that's what you're going to need. That's what he's going to need to be if he gets to the big stage against Trump.
Well, Stephanie, I think he actually did a pretty good job last night, as opposed to just sort of being a pincushion like he did before. When he said to Bernie Sanders, hey, for a socialist, you seem really comfortable with corporations. Like, I thought that was one of the best lines Joe Biden has delivered in the entire campaign season. I think he was passionate and engaged and did a very, very good job of explaining how many people he's going to cover and how and the way it's going to work. Here's what's key about this. And I think for the top three candidates, really for any of the Democrats running next year, this is a winning issue, regardless of the minutia, regardless of how we're going to pay for it. Because when it comes to health care, they will have a plan, and Donald Trump doesn't really have one. That's what's going to help them next fall. Donald Trump's plan is, I don't like Obamacare. When Elizabeth Warren came forward and said, look, I don't know anybody who likes their insurance company, people like their doctors, that's something else that people tend to understand. So I don't think that this internal family debate is going to hurt anybody long term, because they're all going to have a better plan, because they're all the president's been talking about since he got in office.
Abby, let's talk about Julian Castro for a minute. Garrett Haake said he was swinging for the fences. Other people said what he was doing was playing dirty, going after Joe Biden on health care, but not on his plan, much more on his conduct. Watch this.
Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Okay, there's two things at play here. The difference in these two men's plans, Abby, but really, Julian Castro, he can say after the fact he wasn't going after Joe Biden's age or his memory, but come on now. He clearly was. Who do you think that hurt more, Julian Castro or Joe Biden? Because at the end of the day, Castro was wrong. Biden didn't forget what he said.
Well, there was a definite immediate social media backlash to Secretary Castro, and not in a good way. But what I think is important to remember about this is he got to that debate by going after Congressman O'Rourke in June, and then he tangled with Vice President Biden in July. He got his attention that way, the fundraising, the uptick in polling. But this is a very different situation. The field is smaller on this stage. There's less engagement. The moderators really didn't run this debate in a way to kind of set each candidate against each other. So this was really an outlier in tone, where the other candidates were very much trying to strike a, hey, we're all in this together, we must defeat Trump kind of situation.
Maria, was that the right way to go after Biden? To Abby's point, Julian Castro did separate himself by getting aggressive in the last two debates, but this was a different tone.
It was a different tone, and it didn't really sit well when they were inside, when you were inside the debate hall. Everybody kind of did a collective gasp. And part of it is because I think a lot of the voters don't want mean. They want policy, and they want to go after people that in ways that are fair. However, at the same time, what Julian was trying to demonstrate is that he is ready for this prime time, that he is pulling at 1%. And today people are still talking about him, and that is part. And in this kind of cycle, that's not bad news. However, I do also think that he was also preparing himself. Look, if I am not on top of the ticket, I'm a very good second of the ticket. I can take Texas, and I can be toe-to-toe with Mike Pence.
Maybe, but after last night, if the candidate was Joe Biden, I'm not so sure he'd want to pick Castro. No. Charlie, let's talk Beto O'Rourke, a guy from Texas who came out strong on guns, saying he wants to take away weapons of war. Let's listen.
If it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield, if the high impact, high velocity round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body because it was designed to do that so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Hell yes, we're going to take away your AR-15 is already a T-shirt. What's your take?
Well, that was passionate. That was a high point for him. But I have to tell you, I'm going to say something very, very unpopular here. That kind of reminded me of Donald Trump basically saying we are going to deport 10 million illegal immigrants. This is not going to happen. We're not going to take away tens of millions of guns from Americans. Mandatory buyback is gun confiscation. There is a huge consensus in this country for things like, for example, a ban on these weapons, on background checks, on red flag laws, on the ban of big magazines. But he's going to a place where there's not only logistical problems, there's constitutional problems, and then there's political problems.
That's half the things the president put forward in his campaign, and the spirit worked for him.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is what you're seeing when I say it sounds Trumpian to me. It's making a promise that you cannot fulfill, is not going to be possible, but it does have a certain emotional resonance.
It's aspirational politics.
Right. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not going to ban every assault weapon in America any more than we're going to ban private health insurance policy. But the Democratic Party wants a nominee with an aspiration.
Okay, but
will
this ever happen?
In the next term? Yeah, no. In the next 10 years? No. Okay, but there's nothing wrong with the country setting goals.
How about making promises you don't intend to keep?
No, but here's the problem. Yeah. Here's the problem. Yeah. That the party is all about right now. We love Bill Clinton. We all love Barack Obama. But we're tired of playing in the margins. We don't need a nominee who promises to take down the interest rates on student loans 1%. We need someone who redesigns the system. We don't need to get just 10 more people in the healthcare system. We need to redesign the system.
You're not going to confiscate tens of millions of guns because you know what?
And if we don't set a goal and try, we're never going to get close.
I get that. So you're saying, so Donald Trump lied, made promises he can't keep, so it's okay for everybody else to do it. No. Look, there's also a need to make a distinction here in the general election. It's going to be very unpopular. There are millions of law-abiding gun owners. There are people who sincerely believe in the Second Amendment. Gun control legislation makes sense if it targets the people who are going to commit crimes, who are going to commit mass murder. When you begin talking about going into towns in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio and saying, we are going to confiscate your guns, that's not aspirational. That's going to sound like BS.
Okay, hold on.
And it's going to sound very extreme to voters who would otherwise, I think, be very open to common sense gun control.
Jason Johnson, you are now occupying the voice in my head because I can hear you knowing. What do you want to say?
Yes. First off, did Donald Trump say we're going to make America great after a committee meeting? Did Barack Obama say, yes, we kind of can after I think about it for a while? No. You have to be passionate. You have to have an idea. Who cares if you can't get it done? The American people want someone who's going to try. And Charlie, yes, we can get into all sorts of legislative, academic minutia about what you can do constitutionally and what you can't. But you know what people thought last night? There's a suburban mom who voted for Trump last night who was like, you know what? I'm terrified about sending my kids to school. My husband doesn't have an AK-47. None of my friends have AK-47s. All they do is go out and hunt with rifles. They wanted to hear somebody who's passionate for once instead of somebody who's constantly triangulating. I don't know if Beto O'Rourke is ever going to actually end up being the nominee, but whether it was Beto O'Rourke talking about guns or Castro going after Biden, because that was more of an issue of Biden, that wasn't an issue of age, Democrats want passion. And if they can get a passionate candidate, they can actually win next year instead of somebody who's always worried
so
about
I don't have to
focus
speak
groups.
because that's exactly how I feel.
Okay,
well, then they go. Maria's turn.
Okay.
Maria?
Well, I think we're all missing the point. In order for the Democrats to win, they need to bring back the white suburban moms that basically say they don't like the affairs. They came back to the Democratic Party in the midterms because of family separation and because of health care. And at the same time, they have to grow the electoral base. You know who doesn't like guns? White suburban moms definitely do not like guns. Young Latinos do not like guns. And young people do not like guns. They're growing the electoral base. And that was the purpose of that. He wants to think big, but at the same time, it's like, this is why I differentiate, because I am listening to the deep concerns that you have, because when you go on your streets and when you send your children to school, you feel unsafe. The fact that you are going back to school and finding bulletproof backpacks, that's insanity. And he recognizes that. So it wasn't for the Charlie Sykes crowd that he was actually catering to. He was like, look, with me, we're going to have sensible legislation and we're going to bring the party together and we're going to bring back the suburban moms where they belong.
I'm not talking about the Charlie Sykes crowd. I'm talking about Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Voters who actually have differing points of view.
The reason that the Democratic Party won last year in massive votes was that they were able to go into Wisconsin, they were able to go into the nooks and crannies and change the electoral face of this country because they were able to talk specifically to suburban white women and talk about the issues that they care about.
Okay, you know who wanted to do that last night, Charlie? I want you to listen to this. Amy Klobuchar.
Right.
Amy, at the beginning of this debate, Amy Klobuchar framed herself as the option for voters who are in those states Charlie is talking about, people who are stuck in the middle of these extremes. Did she gain any ground with that argument?
I'm not sure. I think where this does play well, I would think, is actually where the debate happened, which is Houston, Harris County. This is the most important county in America, and I'm not just saying that because I'm from Texas. The plan for Democrats statewide is to run up the vote in this area. This used to be GOP dominated. They had huge successes in 2016 and 2018. But Republicans who are struggling to save this county, to stop the damage, are saying, you know what, it's a different era. The candidates on the presidential stage are arguing for Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and that is not going to play well with here. And even the local Congresswoman, Democrat Lizzie Panel Fletcher, issued an op-ed warning candidates to watch their tone. So I can see that for some of those Democrats in the city of Houston, that might be music to their ears. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how this plays.
Is Mayor Pete in that camp as well, Bob?
I think he's such an impressive young man, but I don't think he's a formula for us to win the election. Because
Did you think Donald Trump was?
Here's what we need is we need someone who is as aspirational, who changes the debate, who raises expectations and changes the electorate.
I don't know what that means.
I'm going to tell you exactly what it means.
I have no idea what
because it's about changing suburban moms, but not just changing suburban moms. It's about the 40% of Americans who don't vote, who think that they have no stake in this. I will guarantee you, when this show is over and I go back to my office and ask the young men and women who work for me what they thought of the debate last night, every one of them will say to me, I didn't watch. And after the election, when I ask them how they voted, they'll all say to me, I didn't vote. And when I ask why, they'll say, because I've got no stake. And unless you're doing something about student loans and health care and assault weapons, you're doing nothing about reaching the 40%. We will not beat Donald Trump by playing it safe or playing in the margins or offering more of the same, or to my friend Joe Biden, a third Barack Obama term. People do not want, no matter how much they admire him, a third Obama term. They want something bold and different. One thing. This race, if you ask people who run campaigns, not journalists, run campaigns.
Just right there. You're an idiot, Stephanie. That's what you were just saying to me. You're an idiot.
This campaign right now is on a steady course. Every week that goes by, every month that goes by, Elizabeth Warren is gaining. Bernie Sanders' votes are migrating slowly to her. Joe Biden slowly but steadily loses votes as it became not about name recognition, not about loyalty to Barack Obama with minority voters. She gains. The party is making a choice about running the risk of a fundamental change candidate.
Okay.
Charles.
So, first of all, to my friend Jason, I don't think the constitutional issues are minutiae, but I would like to know. I would like
to. You think Mexico is going to pay for the wall?
I would actually like Democrats to ask this question: how many congressional seats did they win in swing districts with candidates who were running on this aspirational agenda of banning private insurance, maybe legalizing border crossing, confiscating weapons? How many did they win? Because that's where the election is going to be decided. So you're going to go home to New Jersey. I'm going to go home to Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is going to be one of those swing states. So the question is, what happened in 2018? Did Democrats win by moving hard left in the swing seats, or did they run candidates like Connor Lamb and Abigail Spanberger, who actually were occupying the center like Amy Klobuchar?
Tell me what Donald Trump ran on that was constitutionally viable and that
None of it. But he ran against
he lives in the White House.
But the Democrats they nominated the one person that I think couldn't beat Donald Trump. So what Donald Trump does not need to win this election. He needs for the Democrats to lose it. And he wants to do that by toxifying the Democrats. And he will seize upon anything that is out of the mainstream. All of these issues are winners for the Democrats. Healthcare is a winner for the Democrats. Gun control is a winner for the Democrats, unless they take positions that will be toxic to millions of American voters. Issues like we're not just going to go after bad guys with guns, we're going to confiscate guns. We're not just going to provide universal health care, we're going to ban private health insurance. This is the tipping point, and I do think that Joe Biden got that last night, Amy Klobuchar got that last night, and Pete Buttigieg got that last night. They
sounded like candidates of maintaining a status quo in establishment. If Donald Trump is the candidate of fundamental change for Americans who believe the system is not working for them, who feel in jeopardy, if he's that candidate, no matter how nuts he is, no matter how crazy his ideas, he's getting reelected.
Jason Johnson, to you.
Yes. Look at Lucy McBath in the Georgia 6th. You had John Ossoff, who's like, hey, I'm the local guy. Lucy McBath literally ran off. My son was killed in gun violence, and she ended up winning that seat. That is how people can effectively win next year. That's what you're going to have to do to convince people. The idea of running as this moderate sort of centrist person, that's not what the American people want to see. And I also want to say this. You want to talk about how Joe Biden and Klobuchar did. The recent poll by Essence Magazine, 26% of African-American women are still saying, what else you got, right? These candidates aren't winning with suburban women only in the suburbs. They're winning by getting minorities and young people excited and engaged and galvanized. And if you give them the same piecemeal nonsense that they've been getting for the last 3.5 years with Donald Trump and what they got in the later years of Barack Obama, they're going to stay home and Democrats will lose again.
What else you got? Maria, Cory Booker. Cory Booker, many people have said, made a lot of headway last night. One issue he focused on was race, and he was talking criminal justice reform. The president likes to consider the First Step Act a huge win for him. But how vulnerable is the president on issues of race, and how did Cory Booker do? Maria?
The president inspired a whole manifest by someone that jumped in a car, drove 10 hours down to the safest city in America because it was 85% Latino. And killed one of the largest massacres, sadly, in our nation's history when it came to white supremacy. So when we talk about race and why we're having these conversations, it's a direct dotted line to the Oval Office. What Cory was able to do, he was able to talk about his own personal experience, the neighborhood in which he served as Newark mayor, and highlight that these are issues that are still impassioned, but also so sensitive and so raw, because what the president is doing is pulling back scabs that are painful, but there are real consequences. And it's just not his rhetoric, but it's not just the actions of third party, of individual that he is inspiring, but it is also the individuals, it's also the policies that are deep implications that are tearing the country country apart. And so when we talk about that, we want someone for vision, we want someone that is a patriot, we want someone that says, this is the America that we want. That is what Americans across the country are really looking for. And that's what the question is, like, who walked off that stage yesterday that really had that? And I think it's still kind of a toss-up. I mean, we talked about different policy discussions, but there was yet one person that really unified the country of a unified vision of moving forward.
All right. For anybody who fell asleep early last night, these 5 guests just gave you the whole night in the last 15 minutes.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.